Cool. So hello everyone. We're going to be talking about an introduction to Flutter. We're going to learn all about it. Let me just share actually this screen in front of me. It's easier. So it's going to be like a three-part workshop. It's going to be split into three parts. One is going to be me talking about Flutter, introduction to Flutter, all about it. At any time, just ask questions. I don't want to spend 3 hours just talking to you guys. So ask questions, let's make this interactive, especially because we're not like 100 people here. So anytime you have a question, raise your hand, ask it. Let's just have a chat about it. So we'll talk about Flutter. I'll give an intro to myself so you know why you're going to listen to me for a while. We'll talk about Flutter, and then we will actually build the Flutter app together. You can pull up your ID or you can follow along. And during that part, I strongly encourage you even ask me even more questions. And then lastly, I know a bunch of you here are like second, third year students. So if you have questions in tech, how to get into Toronto tech and stuff, I've been in Toronto tech, and this is, I guess, segue to my intro. I've been in Toronto tech now for about 10 years, 10 to 11 years, since like 2010, 2009 even. So I went to McMaster. I did my second year at McMaster, and then Android had just launched. And so I was like, okay, cool. It's, McMaster is cool and all, but things were moving along way too slow in the computer program. So I was in software engineering. And so I said, okay, I'll just like take a break and go build a business. And I'm still currently on that break. So I worked on a startup called Antspot right when Android launched. Android launched when I was in first year, and then so I spent first year working on this. Second year, I kind of scraped myself through, and I was like, okay, now I gotta like be full time on this. So I went and raised money. I got a small bit of investment from a VC downtown Toronto. So that's when I moved downtown in 2011, I think. And we had like a small office at the incubator. And so I worked on this business. Ultimately, the business didn't work out. But what I did at that point was I said, okay, what should I do? Do I go back to McMaster after my 2-year break now? It would have been 2 years now. Or do I just go apply to a job? And so I went back. I did two things. I didn't know if I could get a job because I didn't have a degree. And I was like, what, 20, 21 at this time. So I didn't know much. And so I went back to McMaster and I spoke to the head of the engineering department. I forget his name actually, probably in my email. And I said some bullshit like, oh, I had a good time with that. Now I know how important school is. And I was really doing this for my parents. I didn't really want to go back, but it was like just a hedge. Coming from like an immigrant background, just a hedge that if I, okay, I'm right back at McMaster, I'll get a degree. But I did that. And then the next day I started applying to jobs. And I had already had like 2 years of experience building Android apps because I was doing it for my own startup. And so I applied for a bunch of jobs, and I had enough skill that I knew I was an intermediate, not even a junior. So I applied to a job. I got an intermediate / seniorish role at Kobo. And that was it. Like I never looked back. I've been in the tech sector since officially, I guess, when someone actually paid me to do something. So I worked at a company called Kobo. I was there 2 years. And then I was at a company called League, which is a health insurance company. And there I did more Android, but then I started doing like backend DevOps. And then during this time, I had another business that I ran, which was fairly successful. And so I did that. And then I got into around 2016, I saw that machine learning AI was taking off. So I joined a very early stage AI startup. Now they're called Calendar Hero. Before they were called Zoom.ai. And I worked on NLP, machine learning, like TensorFlow had just come out, all sorts of stuff. So I did a lot of that. And then I eventually was promoted to CTO there. And then after that, I was like, you know what? I've worked enough at companies. Now I'm just going to be full-time consulting and work on my own startups. And so since 2019, I've been consulting / doing my own business, which is Irene. And Irene is Canada's first online funeral home. I was in Japan in 2016 or 2017, actually, and I saw that they were doing death in a very interesting way. It was very automated, but at the same time, very human. And so I wanted to do that in Ontario also. So my co-founder and I, we started Irene here. We had like fought 2 years versus with the government of Ontario to get a license because they were afraid that if we launched, we would destroy a lot of funeral home businesses because a lot of them are just like, upselling, charging way too much money because they're taking advantage of people in need. And I could bring all those costs down while keeping it very human. And so we finally got the license, and they were right. We are kind of destroying all the old school funeral homes, but it's good. It's good disruption. So I've been doing that. I've been doing consulting for machine learning. I was just saying this before a lot of you joined to one of the hosts, where one of the most recent projects I'm working on, which is kind of cool, is Boston Dynamics. We're working on the Spot robot. We're building like sensors to do all sorts of cool stuff that's like very secret right now. But yeah, so I'm just involved in everything. So the story of Flutter, actually, the way I do technology is I've always been doing tech, not as like, okay, I'm going to learn cloud and I'm going to figure out what cloud is, or I'm going to learn machine learning and figure out what machine learning is. I just did it as I have a problem I need to solve. And in order to solve this problem, I need to know A, B, and C. And so just so happened that one of the problems that I had was I needed to build a iOS and Android app very fast. Actually, step back. One of the problems I had was back in 2012, when I got into like the official workforce, I guess, right? Someone paid me a salary. I was doing Android development, but I wanted to build backends also because whatever. That's just how it. I need to solve problems, not just being a mobile developer forever. And so I started to learn Node.js, and Node had just come out in 2012. I think it came out like 2010, 11. And then I started to give talks on Node and got very familiar with Node, and I liked it a lot. But one of the problems I had with Node was I gave the first talk at Node.js at OSCON, which was an open source conference back in like 2013, I think. But one of the problems I had with Node.js was JavaScript was still not an easy language for me to write large code bases in. So I was looking around for a new language that I could pick up, and I found Dart. And Dart had come out recently as well. And Dart was by Google. And so I got very involved with Dart. And what I do is I get involved in a thing. I start using it for my challenges, to solve my own problems. And back then I was building something, and I needed a good solid backend language. And so I started using Dart. And Dart was great. And so over the years, despite at my day jobs, I've been doing like Android or Go or Python, I was doing a lot of Dart in my time to build my own startups. And so the annoying thing was I used to build an Android app. I was okay with iOS. I never really liked Objective-C, but I had a problem where we were building an app and I wanted to build Android and iOS, and I did not want to build two apps at once. So in 2013, I had used a framework called Cordova, which was basically HTML5 like souped up, right? And the whole journey of HTML5 is insane also, because there was a time where Facebook was like, native apps are dead. HTML5 is the way to go. And so when Mark Zuckerberg said that, all these companies started to like forget about Android and iOS, which had just recently even come out. Like they were probably 5-6 years into their lifespan, and they started focusing on HTML5. So Cordova and PhoneGap, which is all the same thing really, all started to like bubble up, and they became very popular because it was easy to use. As a developer, it was easy for me to just build once and get it deployed everywhere. Website, Android, iOS, who wouldn't want that? And so I built this startup using Cordova, and it was like an adult chat startup. I can give you guys the whole story about that later. But I built it, and I realized quickly that there was a big problem. The performance was just like garbage. It was complete bullshit. Like, on my phone, it would work fine because I would always have the latest phones. The Pixel came out, the Nexus 1 came out, Nexus 2, I would buy it. But most people aren't just like wasting money buying phones. So they're on phones that are like 2-3 years old. and Cordova ran like garbage on there. And so I started to go back to Android. I did native Android. I built the iOS app out. So many years go by, and I've kind of forgotten about Cordova. Like I never recommended to anyone. And I was using a lot of Dart. So I started speaking at these Dart conferences. Like I spoke at the first Dart conference ever. There's like a younger version of me on YouTube giving a talk about how I migrated from Node.js to Dart. And at that conference, one of the product managers of Chrome came on stage, Eric Seidel, and he said, we're working on something, and it's called Sky. And Sky is going to be, I mean, I guess we skipped a bunch of slides here, but here we go. Where did Flutter come from? So he says, Sky is going to be the future of Dart. And I was excited because I had heard rumors that they were doing something with mobile. And so I was very excited that they were going to make Dart the default language and replace Java on Android with Dart. And Kotlin wasn't even around back then. And so you built Android apps with Dart. And so I got very excited. But then they got onto stage and they said, you know, here's a calculator, here's like a square floating around, and this is built in Dart. And my heart sunk a bit because I was like, oh no, they're going down the phone gap route. I think this is HTML5. Because, you know, you have the product manager of Chrome on stage talking about Dart and mobile. It just made sense that this was a web view technology. But what I found out very quickly was it wasn't. What they had done was they themselves, Google, had this problem. And Google's problem was they have so many engineers, and whenever they come out with new features for their mobile apps, they have to rebuild the app twice. One team for Android, another team for iOS. And so they said, there must be a better way. And React Native was very young at this time. And you know, Google wasn't going to go use a Facebook product anyways. But they were trying to explore new ways of doing stuff. And the inspiration they had was game engines. And if you're old enough, you'll remember back in the day, there was a very popular rendering engine called Flash. And these days it's Unity, but really they're all the same conceptually. The engineers at Adobe or Macromedia who built Flash and like the guys who do Unity, they build a rendering engine that will work on Xbox, PlayStation, Mac, Windows, you know, your TV, your refrigerator, wherever. They just need to know how to build something for that platform. Not you as a developer, but Unity, right? And then when you write code, you just write it once, and your Unity, your code will run on all these systems wherever the Unity team has built out a rendering engine for. So Google was very inspired by this. Google said, this is amazing. Why don't we do something similar, but for mobile apps? But now building a rendering engine is not like a university project, right? It's not just like, you know, 100 lines and you're drawing a square. It needs to contain everything. It needs to be secure, accessible, fast. You know, everything you can possibly think of needs to go in a rendering engine. And then you need to do it again and again and again for Android, for iOS, for Windows, for Mac, for web. And so they thought about it long and they said, are we going to write a rendering engine? And they said, absolutely not. Because they already had a rendering engine that they've been working on for years and years, which was Chrome. If you look at how Chrome is built, you have, you know, the HTML, CSS, HTML, CSS. Then you have like the JavaScript engine, right? You have V8. And then you have all sorts of code and logic, like for the UI, for right-clicking, for the how to handle mouse and accessibility and extensions. But if you layer all that down, you take away all that garbage, you're left with something that actually says, give me some code. I'm going to talk to the GPU driver or the window, the monitor, the driver, and draw some pixels on the screen, right? But that code that they have, when you go to a website on Windows and Mac, if you're using Chrome, it's going to look identical. And so that rendering engine already draws identical pixels across platforms. So what the Chrome team decided, and that's why the Chrome product manager was there, was they were going to get rid of everything web related, HTML related. They're going to get rid of all that. And they're just going to extract deep within Chrome the rendering engine. And that rendering engine is called Skia. And we're going to extract that. And we're going to now build a layer on top of the Skia rendering engine where we could write some code and it could draw it. And the code we're going to write is mobile app code. Like we're going to draw an app bar. We're going to draw a list view. We're going to draw a floating action button. And so they said, this is the future. Like this way, Chrome already works everywhere. So we already have a rendering engine that works everywhere. We just need to write some code on top that if it's running on Android, behave like an Android app. If it's running on iOS, behave like an iOS app. So then they said, all right, that sounds great. Conceptually, let's start working on it. But what language are we going to use, right? And so the way Google is built internally is very interesting. You might think Google as a very unified front where like all of Google, everyone at Google works on the same thing. Not same thing, obviously not, but like they're all in sync with each other, right? So like if say someone from Google Maps wants a feature on the new Pixel where if you like, I don't know, tap on the back, your home shows up. You might think it might be easy as like, hey, we want to add this feature, then the Pixel team will work on it. But it's not the case. Each product is run like its own startup at Google. They all have shared funding and everything, but in order for each of them to talk to each other, they need to be a good business use case. And so what the Chrome slash this new mobile team, new future of mobile apps team started to do was they started to figure out what is a good language to use. We figured out that we're going to use Chrome's rendering engine, but what's a good language we can use on top? And so they started to basically do what you do at a startup. When if you're looking to build a business, the number one thing you do is you start talking to potential customers and figure out what they're doing. And so the Eric Seidel and like all these guys started to go around team to team and they said, tell me about what languages you use. What do you like about those languages? What do you dislike? And I guess they created a Google spreadsheet, right? Mapping out all the things they like and they don't like. And one of the teams they went to was the Google Ads team. And Google Ads obviously is where Google makes all its money, tracking us and all that stuff. And so one of the teams there said that they're using a language called Dart. They started to get more interested. They're like, yeah, we've heard about Dart from a lot of teams. What is Dart, right? Like we haven't used it yet, but what is it? And so the team started to describe that before they were building their web app in AngularJS, and they moved away from AngularJS to a framework called Angular Dart, which used Dart. And Dart is a very simple, like if all of you here have done Java, you already know Dart. If you've done C#, you already know Dart. Even if you've done JavaScript, you already know Dart. Dart, in my opinion, is the most boring language to learn because you already know it. There's nothing to learn. There's a lot to master, but there's not a lot to learn because as long as you have experience with a C, C++, Java-like programming, you're good to go, right? Because the concepts are identical, the syntax looks identical. If I were to show some Dart code, everyone here would know how to do it as long as you've done some programming. And so they said, look, Dart is very easy for us, but Dart has a lot of good features that JavaScript does not have. And they started talking about all these great features. And if you step back, the history of Dart is actually one of very bad PR. Dart originally launched as a language to make writing web applications better. And in that time, the PR that Google had was, we're going to kill JavaScript. And that really pissed off a lot of people. And Dart really never killed JavaScript. And so Dart was almost like a dying language. There were some people like myself there's probably like, say, I don't know, like 100,000 people using Dart, right? Not like the millions. And so this team though at Google was using Dart, a very important team. And so they said, you know what, we did all our research. It looks like Dart is the language to use to build Flutter apps in because of all the things that we've learned. Dart makes the most sense, not Java, not Kotlin, not Python or anything. Dart, for all its features and its expressiveness, is the perfect language for Flutter. And so then the Dart team and this new mobile apps team, they got together and they started working on this new framework called Sky, which eventually became Flutter. And so the team really follows these like 3 fundamental rules. They go, all right, Dart as Flutter, actually it was called Sky, and eventually they eventually when it launched, it became Flutter. And so they said, all right, so now we've built this rendering engine for Android and iOS. Fantastic. But we need to actually make sure that it behaves and feels just like any other Android and iOS app. Because the worst thing you want is following the missteps of Cordova and PhoneGap and all these web apps back in the day where you would build an app, the user would install it, and the user would be like, why doesn't this behave like an Android app? Why does this behave like an iOS app? This is kind of weird. Why does my Android app look like an iOS app on Android, or vice versa? And so Google from day one said, we need Flutter to basically be like a chameleon, right? If I'm building an Android app, it needs to behave like an Android app. Like the physics of an Android app the app needs to feel, look, behave like an Android app. When it's running on iOS, without me making a lot of code changes, it needs to behave like an iOS app. And so that was the key for Flutter. And so they said, all right, and they got to it. And that is one of the strengths of Flutter, is that it's one rendering engine, you're writing one code, but when your app runs on these different operating systems, it behaves like an operating system. Then they said, we need to make sure it's fast. So it's going to be 60 frames per second, native, Android, and iOS. Like that's how fast it's going to run. And now on these newer phones, it's running at 120 hertz, whatever, but it supports all that. And so it's going to be fast, beautiful, and natural. Fast just means it's going to be 60 frames per second. Natural means that based on the operating system it's running on, the physics is going to be exactly the same. And beautiful, while subjective, basically means that they said on Android, we're going to give you all the UI to make it look exactly like a material design app. On iOS, we're going to give you all the design to make it look like a Cupertino app, like an iOS app. Or just use the same material design everywhere, because you see a lot of apps now, they follow the same design pattern. Like you use Evernote. Evernote looks the same on Android and iOS with the subtle differences in like font and stuff. And that's what they decided, and that's how you can do it everywhere. So before I move on to like our first demo, does anyone have any questions so far? No? No questions? Okay, cool. I have my chat open, so just like write a question in chat if you want, if you don't want to like say it, if you're too shy. All right, so I'm going to show you guys all a demo. Now, in order to use Flutter, you need to know Dart. So let's just talk about Dart before we jump into Flutter. Just so everyone is clear that I'm not making stuff up when I say everyone here knows Dart already. So let's go to Dartpad. And Dartpad is a place where you can just write Dart on the browser. So take a look at this line of code here, right? We have a main function. And in this main function, we have a loop that goes from 0 to 5. And it prints out what's happening, right? Is anyone unclear of what's happening here, right? Everyone should know if you've done programming. If you haven't, then you can ask me a question for sure. But if you have done programming, I don't think anyone would have questions here because this is just any other normal looking app, right? So if I hit run here, you can see it prints out hello, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. right? So I'm just gonna mute, yeah, there we go. Okay, hello, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I can write another function here. For example, I can write a function here that is write to screen and int num, right? And I'm gonna go print hello. I'm gonna write that num, and here I'm gonna say write to screen I. And what is it complaining about? Oh, it's, yeah, that's fine. Okay, there. So I'm gonna hit run. It's gonna print the exact same code. To prove it, I'm gonna change that to 50. Hit run, and it's gonna write all the code up to 50. Right. So this is Dart. Like we can look at some other examples here. Fibonacci, since everyone here probably loves Fibonacci. Right? Main Fibonacci. This is some like recursive loop here. You hit run. It's doing a Fibonacci of 20. I can say Fibonacci of 50 or 60. It's going to take a bit of time because it's like a recursive computation. If it broke, it probably froze my screen. Now, here's what's very interesting about this though, guys. This isn't running on the server somewhere, right? You know how you've always seen like write C in the browser? Yeah, it broke. Write C in the browser and it compiles it on some like virtual machine somewhere and it runs it. No, Dart, because it originally started off as a web language, Dart is actually running on my browser. It's being compiled to JavaScript, and that JavaScript is executing, right? So I'm just going to exit this because I killed it clearly. And so that's what's very cool. And so now, because of that, you could actually write a Flutter app and have it run on desktop, web also. So, but before that, this is Dart. Does anyone have any questions about Dart? Any questions at all? No? All right, cool. All right, so we'll come back to Flutter on the web, but let me open up Intellij. I use Intellij. You can use VS Code. You can even use Notepad, as long as you have the Flutter SDK installed. So when you want to install the Flutter SDK, go to Flutter install flutter.dev, right? Blah, blah, blah. You can read all the fun stuff here. Click Get Started, and you can choose your platform of choice. If you're on Windows, Mac, Linux, or even Chrome OS, which is very cool. I didn't know you could do that. Or if you're in China, you can use their own CDNs there. So now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to install Flutter. So assume I've already installed it. And the number one thing you should always do when you install Flutter is run Flutter Doctor. And what Flutter Doctor does is it checks your entire system, and it makes sure that you have the latest version of Flutter, you have all the correct Flutter plugins installed, and you're good to go. So here you can see that I have Android installed. I have Xcode installed because I'm on a Mac. I have Chrome installed because I'm going to do web development after. I have a bunch of Android studios that I don't need. I have Flutter installed for Intellij Unlimited Edition. I have it installed for like a beta version and it's breaking, but that's fine. I don't even use that one. And I have a device connected because I have my phone plugged in right now. So it's all working. So I'm happy. I don't really care about this one, but everything else is a green check mark. That means Flutter is ready to go. So now what I do is I open up Intellij, and if Flutter is not ready to go when you do this, then you can just install the right plugin and make sure it's ready to go. So I'm going to open up Intellij. Intellij is my preferred environment of choice, but if you want to use VS Code, like I said, go for it. And again, I have my chat open here if you have any questions. So here I'm going to choose Flutter, where I've installed it, development/Flutter. And if I want to double check where I've installed it, I can go which Flutter, and it says users, Bazel, development, Flutter, bin, Flutter. So that's where I'm pointing it to. Here's my SDK path, user, Bazel, development, Flutter. Your SDK path will be different unless your name is Bazel. So you click next. And now it's asking me a couple of questions, and these are very interesting questions. Project name, whatever, that's not interesting at all. So I'm going to say Windsor McMaster collab, right? Like you guys have like some like Avengers Infinity War team up going on here. Then you can go description. So I'm gonna write, this is my app for Flutter. Now, it's asking me for 3 things which are confusing when you're first starting off. Organization, Android, and iOS language. So what is organization? When you publish, if you've ever, like I'm assuming a lot of you haven't done Android development here or iOS development, as in like professionally where you've actually published an app. So if you have, awesome, this is going to be boring, but basically both Android and iOS, they have this idea of package name, bundle ID, in Flutter it's called organization. But basically it's a unique identifier that identifies who you are in this entire world of apps. So typically you want to make it something that is of a domain that you control or like a unique name that you control, right? So in my case, it'll be like dev.phraseolab, right? I could easily make it like mcmaster.university and I could take it, but if McMaster one day tries to publish an app and they want to use that, they won't be able to. Can they do anything about it? Absolutely not. But it's just confusing to developers why you call yourself McMaster if you're not related with McMaster, right? So call yourself whatever. I typically just do like com.phraseolab.app, or if I know what I'm building, like in this case, we're doing a collab Windsor, so I'll go Windsor.mcmaster.collab. I call it Windows, you know, Windsor. Okay, so Windsor McMaster collab. Cool. Now, any questions about that? If you have, please ask me. Then it's asking me for Android and iOS language. But wait, you might be wondering, why does it matter what Android or iOS language am I using? Because we're writing it in Dart. So why is Flutter asking me Android and iOS language to use? The answer to that is, and it's becoming less and less relevant as the days go by. However, it's still relevant enough. If you remember how Flutter works, Flutter is a rendering engine. With Dart code, you write it, it draws it to the rendering engine. But under the hood, it fundamentally is still Android and iOS. So if you want to use, say tomorrow, Samsung comes out with a new phone, and it's a tongue sensor. Like you have to lick your screen to unlock it, right? They broke all COVID protocols. They said, forget it. We're just going to lick our screens to unlock our phones from now on. Flutter is never going to go and install, Flutter is never going to go and build a tongue sensor into the app, into Flutter, because Flutter is not responsible for that. Flutter is responsible for taking your code and drawing it pixel perfect on the screen. They're not responsible for what the manufacturers are doing. And so if they do a tongue sensor and you really want to build this tongue sensor, you will have to go in and write some code in Android that will expose the tongue sensor to Flutter. So that's why if you're familiar with Kotlin, choose Kotlin, if not Java. 99% of the time, as you're building your apps in 2022, you won't have to touch this because most of the plugins are already being built to native devices. But if you ever have to tie into something, like, you know, a more relevant example would be you're working for a client and they like Boston Dynamics actually, right? I need to build a plugin for Spot. There's no Spot SDK for Flutter. So I'm going to need to write some code that exposes Spot's mobile app or Spot's SDK on Android to Flutter so I can build a connector there, right? So I'm using Kotlin. On iOS, I'm using Swift because I'm familiar with them. So I'm going to choose these two. Then lastly, on VS Code, when you create a new project, it does not ask for a lot of languages. Do you know what it defaults to, or can you choose as you go? By default, it will default to Kotlin and Swift, Jacob. What I recommend is when you are using VS Code, the first thing you should do is create your project from the command line. And so then you can choose what languages. So I think it's like Flutter create command, Flutter create command. Yeah, so if you use the Flutter create command and you look at all the arguments for Flutter create, you'll get to choose bundle ID, Android, iOS, all that stuff. Which is why I really like VS Code. It's free also. If you just use Android Studio, you can install Flutter onto Android Studio and you get all this for free. So here it's asking me for platforms. I'm going to let this app work on Android, on iOS, but I'm also going to make it run on Mac and web. If you're using this on Windows, Mac is going to be disabled and Windows is going to be enabled. That does not mean that your app will never work on a Mac. It just means that in order to build Mac apps and iOS apps, you just need a MacBook, right? Like an Apple Mac OS. So you can just ask a friend, or you can go out and buy it, or you can use a bunch of services online like CodeMagic to go ahead and build your, if you're on Windows, you can have it build a iOS or a Mac app or vice versa, a Windows app. So I'm going to let it choose all these, and I'm going to hit finish. So now it's going ahead and it's creating Flutter create. So it's running the same command line as if you would if you're creating a VS Code app using terminal. Tons of notifications. Wow. Who wants them? Oh, yes. Okay. All right. So now here we go. Here is our first Flutter app. And what we're going to do, don't you crap your sorcery, whatever. Okay. What we're going to do here is I'm going to first open it on iOS. So let's just have this running on iOS here. Let's not get too fancy. So I'm going to open up the iOS simulator because I'm on a Mac. If you're on a Windows, you could run it on the Windows Android simulator, or plug your phone in. Like if I just literally plug my phone in, I can deploy this on my phone. I just won't because then you guys can't see it. So I have this running now. And what I'm going to say is I'm just going to hit play. I'm going to make sure iPhone's chosen here. I'm going to hit play. And so now it's going to play. And here's what it's doing. If you look at the command line, it's saying, all right, I'm launching libmain, which is this file on Android SC. But then it's running Xcode build, which means that Flutter, after it does whatever magic it needs to, it just sends off the package to the native build tools for that platform. So it says, hey, Xcode, go build your iOS app, right? I have nothing to do with this anymore. Here's some code, you go build it. And Xcode goes, all right, thanks. And it builds an iOS app thinking it's an iOS app, like any other iOS app. If you were going to do this on Android, it would say, okay, Gradle, go build this. And a million years later, when Gradle finishes, it's going to say, okay, here's your Android app running, right? If you can do this for the web, and it's going to run a JavaScript compiler, Mac, Xcode, Windows, .NET compiler. Well, we'll talk about all those guys. But here, so here's my app. It's running, very boring looking basic app, but that's okay. Boring is good. So let's click this button right here, plus. And what it's doing is it's incrementing the counter, right? Does the Flutter SDK translate, Omar asked, does the Flutter SDK translate Dart code straight into the respective language, or Dart run differently? Yeah, it's not translating anything. Flutter is actually converting the Flutter SDK is taking the Flutter code and compiling it into bytecode that can then run on the rendering engine. The rendering engine can read that bytecode. So it's not converting it to Java or whatever. The only time a source is being converted is for the web, because the web only runs JavaScript, but that will change soon because of WebAssembly. Right now, there's a whole thing on getting it to run on WebAssembly, which is going to be next level. But right now, the only time code is converted is Dart to JavaScript. Otherwise, it's actually being compiled down to like binary bytecode that is being sent over to Xcode. And Xcode thinks, okay, I just have like a big binary file and like a rendering engine in Swift or whatever, and I have to build this app. For all Xcode things, it's just like one screen app, right? But it's not, it's just a trick. So now I'm going to hit plus, and it's increasing. So you might think, okay, well, this is nothing fancy. It's just a button. I can do this on Android or iOS too, or just a waste of my time. But here's where Dart's development experience gets good. One of the things that the Google team really worked on, I was at Mountain View 2014, 2015, when they were working on this. And the product manager told me, you know, one of the things that we're really, really focused on is making the developer experience good. And this is a lesson, you know, in all your careers. Technology can be amazing. You can have the coolest tech in the world, but if the developer experience is garbage, no developer is going to use it, and it's never going to take off. So there might be 100% guaranteed there is some cross-platform framework out there that is so much better than Flutter, right? It may be something by like a European company, some random tech startup in Silicon Valley, some Japanese company, doesn't matter. But their developer experience is garbage, as in they're not giving me the right tools, the right documentation, the right experience as I'm developing apps to make my life easy as a developer. And so that's never going to carry on. I'll give you an example. The McMaster folks, I know you learn OCaml, or at least you did learn OCaml when I was there in second year. And you know, functional languages are great. OCaml is cool, but OCaml has the worst developer experience. Like as a functional language, it is so trash. Like it's using some like weird editor, doesn't even work properly half the time. And there's plugins, but it doesn't have a good developer ecosystem. And so it's only good from an academic standpoint. But in a real life, you would never use OCaml in like as a serious developer. I'm sure your professor's going to hate me for saying that. But what you would use is a different functional language, right? Like Haskell or something, where they have a nice developer experience. It's designed for like enterprise level applications. So this is why Windows and .NET really rules the world and still a lot of part of the world. Theoretical math course, wow. That's even lamer. At least the OCaml course is good. But like if you look at Europe, India, Russia, like all like that side of that world, that's Ukraine, like actually, you know, I'm saying these countries because they were really big on .NET. It's because .NET has such a good developer experience. Visual Studio, not Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio is like the best IDE ever. Microsoft invested so much money into it that those countries where they don't get paid a lot and time is literally money there, they're not going to spend time figuring out a bunch of random tools to get it working like a North American developer. They need something that works with one click. And so .NET works that way. And it's cheap and it works. And so that's why it's dominated that. Now it's changing, obviously, in the past like 5-6 years. But this is why, think about developer experience. So when we look at Flutter, Flutter has exploded in India and China and that side of the world. Estonia, Flutter is huge there because the developer experience is so much better than Android and iOS. And I'm going to show you guys exactly why now. So your developer comes to you and says, your designer, and says, this app should not be blue. This app should be green. And so if you were building an Android and iOS app, you have to stop it, compile it again, it shows up. With Flutter, I can do this. I can hit red, I can hit save, and the app changed, right? In real time, the screen is changing. I'm able to change colors. Say your developer says, it shouldn't say Flutter demo homepage. It should say Windsor, McMaster, Jam. I hit save, bam, right? But here's what's wild, everyone. Look at this number 34. This number 34 has not changed. If you know, I'm going to assume everyone's in software here. If you think about anything like computational science you're learning, you have like a stack of variables, right? Maybe you do this course later on, I'm not sure. But just like, it's not compiling at runtime. It's sending the delta of changes, and it's only compiling that one line of code that I've changed, and it's inserting it into the tree, right? So, and it's keeping all the memory, the variables in the stack the same, so that If it was like fully compiling and redeploying, then all the variables would change, right? It would all reset back to 0. But here it's keeping track of what the variables were. And so when new code appears, it's not getting rid of it, which has its benefits, which is the following, right? Say I'm working on this, and now I need to write more UI. So I'm gonna basically create a UI in front of everyone here, right? I'm gonna say, okay, I'm gonna first add another text here. I'm gonna say McMaster has a better campus than anyone. I truly believe that. I think McMaster's campus is great. So look at that. McMaster has a better campus than anyone, right? Especially Waterloo. So I'm going to write one more text here. Especially Waterloo. Okay, so cool, right? Two text showing up. Now, I don't want this to look this way, so I'm going to change this, and I'm going to have it look small. Cool, but now we're just writing text. What about adding buttons? So let's add a button here. Let's add an elevated button. And when I click it, I want something to happen. But before that, I'm going to say, click me. Right? Yeah. What is this? Oh, yeah, I forgot the comma here. Oh, so here it is. If I hit save on this thing that's broken, it's not going to break my app, right? It's not going to send broken code up and break my app. It's going to keep the code the same. So I forgot my comma here. There we go. There's my button. Click me. And now I'm going to do, all right, when I click that button, I want this counter. I'm going to get rid of this actually. Okay, I'm going to get rid of that. So that variable's gone now. You might wonder, okay, well, that variable's gone forever, but it's not. I'm going to bring it back. I'm going to keep that variable. I'm going to get rid of this button that moves it. See, this button's gone now at the bottom. Why is it not going? There we go. See, this floating action bar button's gone. And I'm going to move that button here. So actually, when I remove this variable, you might have noticed 34 is gone. But now I can bring it back because that variable is the same, 34. And I'm here, I'm going to say increment counter. And now when I hit click me, it's going to change 34. Right? So I'm actually writing code. This is an app that I'm writing in real time without having to stop, restart, stop, restart. And it's just working. So now, here's what I can do that's really crazy. I can go find examples anywhere. And I'm going to use this example that I always use. Many years ago, a friend of mine asked me, he was an Android developer, and he said, what is the alternative to a relative layout in Flutter? Because he was from Android. So if you search up relative layout Flutter, this question shows up, equivalent of a relative layout in Flutter. And I want you all to make note of this date, 2017, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this code that someone answered. It's not important who. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to paste this. This is 2017 code. And I'm going to have to make some changes because from 2017, Dart has changed slightly, where I just have to add some parameters here and just get rid of some stuff here. So like this text heading change, but that's okay. This code is from 2017. That's totally forgivable. I'm going to get rid of this. And this is not important what I'm doing. I'm just upgrading the code. And you can see I'm upgrading it very quickly because it's not even, it's just like some styles that change, that's all. But keep looking at my app there, right? It's still there, right? Because whatever, even though I've changed, can I download Flutter on external hard drive? Yeah, you can do that. I don't see why not. All right, there we go. All right, so now there's some like modifications I can do, but whatever, remove. Okay, there we go. So most of my code seems to be good. There's some simple changes I can make here, but whatever. Now watch what happens. I'm going to hit save. right? Oh, yeah, I'm gonna hit just restart this. And there we go, right? The entire app has changed. Like it's a whole different app now. And all I had to do was copy and paste code, but this code was from really, really old. If I find more recent code, I just need to copy and paste and it works. So now that we have this code here, what is it complaining about here on 984? We're just gonna get rid of that. Okay, so, and I'm just gonna get rid of ties. If anyone is, yeah, there we go, Omar can help. So I'm gonna get rid of where it says ties, because I think that looks ugly. So child into it. All right, cool. So here we have a little music app that we've basically stolen from Stack Overflow and copied and pasted, and it's working. So it looks fine, but now this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna copy this, and I'm going to go back to Dartpad. And remember, this is running on iOS, right? And just to show you all, I'm gonna create, I'm gonna open up Android Simulator. So we'll get it running on Android too. I don't know why I can't see my simulator here. I should be able to see Android, but I'm just gonna open up the simulator here. Configure, SDK manager. How do I do this? Just like you know, oh, there we go. Right. So I'm gonna turn on Pixel 3. Sure. Accept. All right. Because I'm on a Mac, I can run both Android and iOS. So here we go. I'm going to turn on my Android device, and we're going to run the same app first on Android. So we're going to get the basics out of the way. Mobile works fine. There's just my firewall complaining. Okay. So I should be able to go here and see, look, Android now shows up, Android SDK. I'm going to click that, and I'm going to hit play. And now what it's going to do is it's going to say, okay, run this on Gradle, right? Makes sense? So now it's running it on Gradle. So now I've resized it. So I hate the Android simulator. It's so garbage. Okay, anyway, I don't know how I resized it, but now it's gone. Okay, well, I hope everyone can see a small app. I don't know why I resized it or how I did that. But anyways, let's just wait. It's running Gradle. This is why I don't like Gradle. It takes so long. That's why iOS, it just builds it very quickly. So let's just wait. Probably be like 30 seconds. Meanwhile, any questions so far on what we've done? Anything confusing? Cool. I'm assuming everyone's either listening to me or playing like a game and not listening to me, like Xbox or PlayStation or doing school. Okay, come on. This is going to be worth it, I promise you. Okay, there we go. So I've installed the app, it's building it. I am so sorry, I have no idea how to resize this emulator. But you know, it's a tiny app, but here we go. It's the same app now. Sorry, is that a police going by? It's the same app, but now it's running on Android, right? And so that's cool. It looks and behaves. Now look at the physics behind it, right? On Android, when I pull on the list view, I see this blue glow, right? And that's how all Android phones are. If you have an Android device, you know what I'm talking about. But on iOS, and remember, I haven't changed any code. On iOS, it behaves like an iOS app. It's the physics, right? So it's the same thing, but it's behaving based on the operating system it's running on. Android, or iOS, Android. And so all the subtle changes you can expect from iOS and Android, it will automatically give you those changes. Now, we're going to run this on the web. So we're progressively getting crazier and crazier here. Now we're going to run this on the web. I'm going to hit play. And now it's going to take all this Dart code and it's going to compile it to JavaScript. And it's going to deploy it as a JavaScript app on Chrome. So it's saying waiting for connection from debug service on Chrome. I hope it opens up. Let's just see. Yeah, there we go. Chrome's opening up. Okay, and it's compiling my app. And there we go. We have the same app now running on the web. Right, so let's get all these guys. This is like a whole team up here. Right, we have big iOS, mini Android, we got the web working. And so far, if you've noticed, I haven't changed a single line of code, right? It's just working. Now, what if you have an ambition to make a Mac app? Let's actually build a Mac app. So here's Mac OS desktop. I'm going to run the same code on and make it a Mac app. I'm going to hit play. The only thing I won't be able to show is Windows because I don't have a Windows, but it's now compiling this app, building Mac OS. It's compiling this app for Mac. And so if we just wait probably another 30 seconds, the same code will compile. Then I'm going to show you all something very, very cool. Well, let's just wait. Any questions so far? Is anyone impressed? I hope everyone is impressed. This is sick. Yes, yes. When can you show the code for list again? I'll be able to. Yes. Let me just do this and then I'll show the code. Oh yeah, Lala, this is super simple. Now look at this. Here we go, guys. We have a Mac app working, right? And this is a Mac app. And I can, if you look at down here, it's a Mac app. If you understand, if you have a Mac, you know this. This is a Mac app working, right? The images are failing, you might notice, and that's because the way when you build a Mac app, you need to like whitelist the URLs you're going to hit, but that's okay. That's a small issue. That's not a big problem. We can go in and change some configuration and it'll work, but that's not the point. And it's the same interaction. Now, on Mac, you can't horizontally scroll. Like there's no like touch on a Mac, right? I can't hit like, I can't take my mouse and move it. But on Android, I can do that. So look at that. It's the same physics. On Android, I can use my finger, assume my mouse is the finger. I can swipe through these tabs. On iOS, I can swipe through these tabs. But on Mac, I can't because that's not how Mac apps are. Mac, you have to click on stuff. So look, it automatically shows me something clickable, right? Click, click. Now, that's cool. But you might say, all right, what if, so far, I've impressed everyone here by having the same app on everything. The problem is this app, though, still looks like a mobile app running everywhere, right? This is a very crappy looking Windows Mac app. You don't want your Mac app to look like this, right? So you might say, well, that's cool, but like, that's going to look ugly. No, like, what if I go to my web app here, Chrome, Chrome, and someone has Chrome full screen. I have a 24-inch monitor, I don't know. Like that looks ugly to me, right? That's not how web apps should be. So what do? Do I need to write 4 apps now? No. This is where it gets really cool. So this is all about code architecture, but I'm not going to show you the architecture as much as I'm going to show you the core concept here. So look at where it says Tofu songs, right? So let's go to where it says Tofu songs. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make Tofu songs a function. Tofu songs is a text view that takes a string as data. So I'm going to say load app name. I'm going to call a function here. All right. And I'm going to go down here. I'm going to create a function. Load app name. Also, we're going to find the libraries that required syntax. Yeah, I'll tell you about that in a second, sure. So load app name, and it's going to return a string. All right. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if platform dot, I'm going to import platform. Whoops. I'm going to import platform. I'm going to say if platform dot is Android. I'm going to say return tofu Android. Else if platform.is iOS, I'm going to return tofu iOS. Else if platform.is Mac, I'm going to return tofu Mac. And then I'm going to put in, this is where it's kind of weird. There's no platform.is web, but what there is if k.is web, this is like documentation that I'll send everyone, you can find it, but if it's web, I'm going to return tofu web. Okay, so here, the logic is else if it's none of these, I'm going to return tofu. Okay, so the logic is if this is running on web, return tofu web. If this is running on Android, return Android. If it's iOS, iOS, Mac, Mac. Now I'm going to start doing the instant reloads, right? So let's go back to our Android app here. And let's open up our Android emulator here, where it says tofu songs. I'm going to hit save. I have so many things running, it's actually getting confused. Oh, my bad, it reloaded iOS because this is the iOS tab. Of course, syncing files to iOS. So look at this, tofu iOS. I'm going to click the Android. I'm going to hit save here. If I go to the Android app, tofu Android. I'm going to go to both of them. I'm just going to refresh everyone. Tofu web. And if we open up Mac, tofu Mac. So you're getting, okay, that's cool. It's just text. But can I do something even more? Absolutely. Check this out now. So let's go and add something. Let's go here to a list view, and actually not even before the list view. Let's go all the way to the top of the application where we have a row, and I just want to test something quickly because I haven't modified this code in a while, so I just want to see what happens if I type this code in here. Hello. Okay, it says hello here. Cool, right? So now this is what I'm going to do. Where it says hello here, I'm going to say load platform specific widget. And I'm going to explain what widgets are in a second, like right now. A widget, think of a widget as a component. Everything you see on the screen is a widget, right? So think of it as Lego blocks, and widgets go inside of each other. So I'm going to say load platform specific widget, and it returns a widget. And like before, I'm going to say if k.is web, I want to return, if it's web, I want to return a button. Okay, let's just say I want to return a button if it's a web app. Web button. Cool. And if it's Android, I'm going to return, let's return an icon. So these are totally different widgets now, right? One is a button and one I'm returning an icon, right? Icons dot, I'm going to return Android, the Android logo. Else if it's not Android or the web, I'm just going to not return anything. It's going to be blank. So now this is platform specific code. And I've written that all my web users are going to see something that says web button. So I'm going to go here, find web. I'm going to hit save. And it's compiling. Look at that, right? But if I go to iOS here, and I look at my iOS app, you don't see web button there, right? Because it's being included in the platform. Now, but if I go to Android, if I go to Android now, and if I open up my Android app, you're going to see the Android logo there. So when you're building these vast multi-platform apps, you can have entire pages and screens as you all learn about Flutter more. You just need to keep in mind if platform dot is whatever platform. And then you can then suddenly go, okay, if it's running on Android, I want the screen size, the list view to look like this. So here's what I can do. Check this out. List view, right? someone talked about the list view. So here, I'm showing the list view here. The list view is just a widget which has children in it. And I don't know how this is gonna work, everyone, so we're gonna do our best. If it's on mobile, I want it to go up and down. But if it's on a Mac, I want it to go horizontally, right? Because on a web, I want it to go horizontally. So I'm gonna say, I think it's called orientation. Yeah, scroll direction, vertical. Okay, so scroll direction, I'm gonna say platform dot. Actually, I'll make it easier for everyone. Get scroll direction. This is very verbose, but that's fine. Create method, and I'm gonna say if platform dot is Mac, I'm gonna say return scroll direction dot reverse. Okay, maybe this is not gonna work the way I want it to, but let's see. I think this isn't gonna work, but I'll make it work after. Let's just see what happens. So if it's on a Mac, whoops. Okay, so if it's on a Mac, let's go to our Mac app. If it's on a Mac, then I wanted to, axis. What does scroll direction mean? Axis dot vertical. There we go. Whoops. So axis dot, it's gonna work. Horizontal, and then axis dot vertical. Save. Oh yeah, this is breaking because it can't scroll horizontally. It's totally broken here, but it's not gonna break anywhere else. So we're not gonna do scroll direction. What we're going to do is we're gonna say if platform dot is Mac, return grid view, and else we're going to return list. So on a Mac, I'm going to show a grid. Now, here's what I do. And this is, again, as if you're computer science students or software engineering student, this is what real developers do. I'm going to Google how to build a grid view very quickly, because I totally forget. Grid view Flutter, right? I'm going to go, and it's going to go to the first example here. And there we go, gridview.count. I'm going to copy this. This is how we're going to build it. I just need this. Gridview.count. Cool. So Google is very important in the life of a developer, and your professor doesn't teach you that probably because you have to memorize everything, but no one memorizes anything in the real world. All right, so children, and now I'm going to pass in the exact same children here, right? It looks the same, but on a Mac, it's going to be a grid. Everywhere else, it's going to be a list. I don't know if this is going to work, but let's see. Save. First, let's just make sure it works on a Mac, on an iPhone fine. So far, iPhone, perfectly fine. Now I'm nervous. What's going to happen on a Mac? Let's see. Look at that. It's a grid now. It looks ugly for a grid, right? But on a Mac, it looks like a grid. On a iPhone, it looks like that. Now they're starting to look like totally different apps, right? Look at that. But you can do all this now, right? You just need to know platform dot is whatever. And so the point of all this really is that the developer experience for Flutter is so flawless and so easy that you can build very robust apps very quickly. But I would say when you're starting off, do not try to build everything, right? All these concepts, try to understand Android and iOS only, right? Don't worry about web, Mac, or whatever. Just worry about Android and iOS. Start building your application. Run into all the issues in the world. And then you can go, okay, now it makes sense for me to expand to a wider screen, maybe build an iPad app, maybe build a Mac app. And then I can add the architecture stuff in where I can say, okay, be a grid on Mac, be a list view on Windows, all that stuff. Okay, so I'm going to pause right there for just a second. I'm going to look at some questions here. Where do I find libraries and its contents that I can use in Flutter along with the syntax? So Tushar, the best place to go is flutter.dev. Again, talking about developer experience, flutter.dev, and click on docs. It has everything you need. You don't even need to go anywhere else, right? You could, if you want, watch some YouTube videos and stuff. Those are fantastic. But like, I would always start from flutter.web and click cookbook and follow these tutorials, right? These are some really good tutorials. There's so much stuff here. Tutorials, building layouts, right? You'll learn how to build this layout. Actually, like, let's just go down and copy this layout. How do I do that? I'm making it harder for me to copy this. Dart code, main.dart, here. Let's just go grab this UI. Let's go into our app here. Oops. Paste it. It's all going to work. I'm going to hit save. And there we go, right? That UI that I just copied is now working. I'm going to make it run on iOS, right? It's missing the image because I didn't copy the image over. But yeah, here's my code working. So I would say you do this. Follow the tutorial, and that's how you're going to learn the syntax. As you go through it, you'll learn about what widgets are, all that stuff. I haven't even touched the surface. Like if we were to go through all of Flutter, it would be like a 6-hour, 10-hour workshop. So that's one question. I will post the code, Abdul. You'll be able to play with it. Actually, let's do it right now before I lose this code. So copy. Yeah, let's do it in Dartpad. Why not? I don't know how that works. Reset. I'll just do it in a gist. Here. Create secret gist. All right, here we go. Bam. Okay. So the next question was, I've worked on Ionic. Yeah, build time is amazing for sure. Okay, so no other questions. This is also grab widgets. Yes. So we're about to talk about Pub. So far I've only shown widgets that Flutter comes with out of the box, right? So let's undo all this work, all the craziness that we did here. I'm gonna just hit undo. I'm gonna hopefully my sample code where I have the button and stuff is still there. Fingers crossed. It's a lot of undoing. It's not. Damn. Whatever. So let's do this. Let's get rid of all this crap here. Okay, I'm going to create a stateful widget and we'll call it my app. Okay, it's saved on iOS. And if everything looks good, yeah, okay. My app, and this is going to be Dartpad. Dartpad is just for demos, to sharp. It's just like a fun thing to show your friends that, look, you don't need to install Visual Studio Code. You can just run Dart in the browser to learn. I use Dartpad when I just don't want to pull up an IDE just to write some code. I'll do it just to test like something, and then I'll leave it. Yeah. So I'm going to go app bar. I'm just creating a default app here. Body container. All right, that's why I run app. Material app. Okay, oh, there we go. There's my app. Okay, so here I have my sample app back. Let's just make sure it works. Center, child, elevated button, child, text below. And then I on press. Okay, cool. All right. So far, I've just been dealing with how all the built-in components. But as Omar correctly pointed out, that will only get you so far. Pub.dev is where you can find a vast number of Flutter libraries that you can use, right? So say you want to use GPS. You can click on GPS, you can install GPS this way, and now you're getting GPS coordinates, right? internally, this developer, whoever this unverified uploader is, this is like an old package, but they went ahead and they wrote an Android and iOS SDK code there in Swift and Kotlin that goes and grabs GPS and returns it to you, right? So they did all the hard work for you. So let's just use something here. Let's see what the most popular stuff is. Oh, I know. Okay, Swipeable Stack. Someone built a Tinder-like UI, right? So you can swipe stuff here. So let's go through and use this together. So I'm gonna go to installing, and it says to run this, do Flutter pub add Swipeable Stack. So I'm gonna go here, and I'm gonna open up, and I'm gonna go to terminal, and I'm going to wait. Actually, forget terminal. I'll just do it here. Click copy this and go into pubspec.yaml. Pubspec.yaml is like where you declare all your external dependencies, like third-party stuff. So I'm going to put in Swipeable Stack. I'm going to hit save. I'm going to hit pub.get. Cool. Then it says now import it into your code. I'm going to import it right here. So far, so good. Then I go to example. I want to see how this guy actually uses it. So he has a bunch of examples here. Clearly he doesn't even have a good example. So I'm going to hit readme. Oh, right here. Swipeable stack builder return image.asset path. Okay. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go here and I'm going to get rid of my button. I'm going to paste it here. Yeah, but we have to install it also, right? Or Flutter will automatically pull it from dependencies. Flutter automatically pulls it from dependencies, Michelle. As long as it's in PubSpec, Flutter, you click pub-get up here, or you do Flutter pub-get, and it pulls it in. So now I'm going to go, okay, and it needs image path. So let's go find Keanu Reeves. Images. So let's just grab this photo of Mr. Keanu. Okay, and I still don't know what's going to happen, so I'm going to say image.network. I'm going to pass in Keanu Reeves here, a photo of Keanu Reeves. It says it compiled, which is always a good thing. So let's pull up our iPhone and see what happened. Cool, Keanu Reeves is there. But like, okay. But like, what is it doing, right? I actually still don't know what it's doing. So, Swipeable Stack. Next thing you do, because this is a third-party one, this might have been a terrible example to use, but we'll figure it out. I guess we're going to have to go into his GitHub. And this is the life of a developer, everyone. This is what you do. Click example, click lib, click examples here, and basic example. So what is he doing? He has images here. Okay. He has like a controller and everything. He's doing a lot of shit here. Oh man, it's like the worst example we chose. Okay. Return stack, overlay. Oh man, this is a terrible example we chose. Oh, return stack. What? Okay, we're gonna probably ignore this. Hold on, let me see what happens here. Return stack, example card, stack area, whatever. Swipeable stack. I see builder from index. But how are you telling it how many items there are in the list? See images. Let's see where images is being used. Oh, item index. Oh, this is a weird one. I don't know if this is going to work, but let's see. He returns a stack with an example and a bunch of children. So that's what we will do. And we will see if we can see multiple Keanu Reeves show up. Stack, children, and then I will just duplicate this image over and over again. Let's see what happens, everyone. Oops. No, terrible. This was a terrible demo example because I have no idea how to use it. Let's find a better one. I'm sorry about that. Let's go to Pub. And let's see if we can find actually another Tinder one, because I know there's a lot of these. I actually used one recently, but we need one with a good example. Ah, perfect. This guy's example is good. All right, so we're going to do the same thing. T card. He calls it, not even ashamed, he just calls it T card right away. All right, and I'm going to copy this, go back to our main. This is going to break because we got rid of that code. We're going to get rid of that code. And so we're going to put something that generates a bunch of cards according to this guy's example. And we're just going to return T cards. And if all goes well, we should see this working. I didn't import it properly. Examples. It's called import. Okay, it's installed. Okay, there we go. All right, let's pray to the demo gods. This works. Oh, look at that. Cool. So 0. There we go. Look at that. Right. So this app, we were able to do this because we got a good widget. Sometimes this will happen, like what happened with us, where you'll find something that seems to be working, but it doesn't clearly. But look at this. This is a nice little widget that we can use. Now what I do is I start to think about how can I modify this. So this is my development process. As you're working in the real world, this is what you should do. You should always copy the example, copy and paste it, and get that working. Base, get it working. Now I know, okay, what is this actually doing? This is a container. It's blue. It has center and it has some images. So now we're going to go and we're going to replace it with that Keanu Reeves image that we had. All right, so we'll go find Keanu Reeves again here. Copy. And we're going to paste it. Now, if I go back, I should see Keanu Reeves. Awesome. And I swipe him away. There's another Keanu Reeves. Like I'm always going to swipe right on Keanu anyways. So we just keep swiping right on him. There we go. And if you're crazy enough to swipe left, then sure, you can swipe left here also. But it's working. Now, let's do one more thing here, right? Instead of the same image over and over again, let's get a bunch of images. So let's declare a list of images, and we'll have one of Keanu here. Let's choose one of Trinity. Carry on notes, right? Let's have one of Lawrence Fishburne. And let's have one of Agent Smith. I think his name is Hugo or something. All right, cool. So we're building like a weird matrix Tinder. So now I go to images, and what I want is list.generate. I want it to generate the amount of images we have. So we have 4 images, so it's going to generate 4 of these cards. And here, I like the new Matrix movie. It was good. I enjoyed it because the Matrix movie was marketed wrongly. It should have been marketed as like a prologue or an epilogue to the franchise, because it's like, okay, it wrapped everything up. It wasn't a movie. It was just like here's what happens after. Okay, so index. So we have index here. So I'm going to start images, index, save. Expected to find, oh yeah, I keep forgetting semicolons. Okay, I'm going to hit reload, and let's see if this works, everyone. Look at that, I see some images in the back. Let's get rid of this color blue, I don't like it. Okay, actually, let's make it green for matrix. All right, cool, here we go. Now we're going to swipe right. Oh, look at that. I'm going to swipe right. That's awesome. Swipe right. Then we're going to swipe left. Right? So there we go. It's very easy. Now, what's cool about this is we can do the same trick. Does this work on web? Probably. Let's go to web. Is this my web app? I think so. Yeah, Chrome. Let's go to Chrome. There we go. Right? Same interaction. Swipe right, swipe left, swipe right. So it's actually very fun to do this. Now, remember when I said widgets are like Lego blocks, right? So this is where you can get pretty crazy. Anywhere you see a child, it means that it accepts another widget. A widget takes another widget. Think of Lego. You can take any Lego block in the world, one from 50 years ago and one from today, and if it's made by Lego, you can stick them together. The same way Flutter widgets work. You can have Flutter widgets that take another Flutter widget, and as long as it's a Flutter widget, it doesn't matter what type of widget it is, it's gonna work. So we're about to do something crazy here. I feel like a YouTuber when I say shit like that, but we're about to do something crazy here, guys. We're gonna take this and we're going to put a list view into our Tinder card. Yeah, exactly. We're gonna put a list view in our Tinder card. It sounds insane, but I think this will work. How are we gonna make it work? I have a couple ideas. We're gonna first, a list view can be infinite, right? So we don't want it to go infinite. We could give it a fixed height because our Tinder cards are a fixed height. So I'm gonna say list view, children, and we're just gonna put in a couple of things here. Text, hello, 1, text, hello, 2. And children means multiple kids, so you can pass in multiple widgets. So I'm gonna pass in a children array, I'm gonna pass in multiple widgets. And I'm gonna pass in an elevated button. I just like using elevated button, it's simple, it looks nice. Button, cool. I'm gonna hit save, I'm not gonna look at what's happening right now. I'm too nervous. But before that, we need to tell the list view to shrink wrap. Shrink wrap means, hey, list view, and this is something you learn with experience because I've read the docs. Shrink wrap just means, hey, list view, don't go unlimited, contain yourself to how many children you have. So shrink wrap, true. See, if we define what shrink wrap means here, oh, there's no definition. You can look it up on the docs. Let's just see if this works first. Cool, shrink wrap. So now we're going to go back to our iOS app. iPhone, let's see, reload. Let's see what happens. Look at that. Our list view, it's scrollable and it's inside a card. Right? This is wild. It is completely the most terrible UI pattern you'll ever find. However, it works. It works because of Flutter's concept of widgets, the Lego blocks. You can stick anything in anything. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to create multiple versions of this. Let's just have it to scroll a lot. Hit save. Ah, I need a bit more just so I can get to scroll more. Okay. Hit save. There we go. Look at that. Right? Scroll. Now, obviously, the scroll is starting to get weird because Flutter doesn't know what should I scroll. Should I scroll the widget or should I swipe the whole list? But it works mostly, right? Like, look, if I scroll this, that's cool. And then if I take my finger and I move it here in the corner, I can actually move this card out. Right? There we go. And then obviously, like before, you can go the following. You can go images.index. Now in my list view, I have a photo of the Matrix team. So now I'm scrolling, right? Scrolling, and then, oh, there's Keanu Reeves. And I can swipe him away. And I'm scrolling, oh, swipe her away, scrolling, swiping, scrolling, swiping the other way. So because children just take widgets, and as long as you have a widget, it works. You can get pretty crazy, right? If I go here and I find like another widget, like say I find I don't know, animated something. Let's see, what can we find with animated? Or no, let's say circle, circular. Oh, that's terrible. Cool Flutter widgets. Awesome Flutter. Okay, let's just see. Here, that's over here. Awesome widgets. Sure. Smartwatch widget. What the hell? Let's see what this does. Okay, let's go on GitHub. Let's see if this works. This is for Flutter for Windows. Oh, package name, analog clock. Okay, beautiful. So we're going to take this package, analog clock, right? And we're going to put it inside our Tinder card, which has a list view, which is then going to use analog clock. So I'm going to take analog clock, pub, and all this you're never going to do in the real world. But what I'm trying to show you is with this pattern of anything fitting in anything, the world, like anything you can think of, you can build. Just think of it as a widget. So now I'm going to take the analog clock, copy it. God bless this developer who made documentation so simple. Paste it in, copy the analog clock, and let's hide the clock right after Neo. This is going to be so stupid. All right. Oh no, it doesn't support null safety. What? Cannot run with sound because of following package, but it does. It says right here, null safe. Null safety is this new thing that came out on Flutter that makes sure that your app doesn't have a null pointer. But it seems like this app is incorrectly saying it's null safe when it is not clearly. So maybe, oh, there we go. 1.1 was null safe. There we go. Okay, never mind. False alarm. Right. There we go. All right. I just had the wrong version number. Okay, here we go, guys. Let's see if this works. All right, I'm scrolling, I'm scrolling, I'm scrolling. Who knows what's going to happen? We see Neo. You can start to see it's okay. Actually, it broke. Oh, okay. It broke because the clock doesn't know what to do. So we're going to do one thing. I'm going to see if this works. It says something like boundary render. It doesn't know what it's doing. It doesn't know how high it should be. So I'm going to actually give it a fixed width. I'm going to put it in something called a resize box. What is it? What type of box?
Size box.
Say it again.
Size box.
Size box. Yes, not resize box. I'm going to go size box. I'm going to say height 100, width 100. Save it. Let's see if this works. Hold on. Here we go. We're about to see. Oh, I did see the clock. There we go. There's the clock. So size box, as I think it was Omar, whoever correctly told me, sometimes, like if you think about it conceptually, it makes sense. Sometimes when you have a list view, when you have like widgets like these and you see this error, it's because the widget is saying, hey, I'm going to be as big as possible, right? But it doesn't know how big it should be because it's in a list view, and a list view technically can be unlimited. It's getting confused. And so when that confusion happens, you have to basically put it inside a box and say, your parent is 100 by 100. So when you expand, you should only be 100 by 100. It might sound a bit complicated. Don't worry about it. When you run into it, you'll like Google and you'll figure out the solution. It's not something you run into all the time. It's just because we're doing some really ridiculous stuff here that we're running into these issues. But just, just something to keep in mind. But there we go, right? Like, and then this whole thing is interactive. Swiped away. So you can do almost anything with Flutter. So before that, we're at 2:30. Anyone have any questions? Any questions? No? Okay. So I'll ask a question to myself and I'll answer. If Flutter is so good, then what is it not good for? Right? Because it's too good to be true right now. Everything, it seems like it works everywhere. It does all sorts of crazy stuff. The answer, there's a couple answers here. Flutter is fantastic if you are building for the North American market, the European market. Flutter is great. Why? Because Flutter, when you build the app, it's a bigger file size. It's like 20, 30 megs. It can even be big. On every North American phone, it does not matter, right? Like most apps are huge these days, especially on iOS. Some of these apps are like 200 megs. It doesn't matter. And then like iOS and App Store, they'll figure out the right amount of data to give you anyway. So the apps don't end up being that big anyways. But if you're building for the emerging markets, like I have a friend who wanted to use Flutter and he lives in Bangladesh. I told him that, you know what, don't bother with Flutter for Bangladeshi market because the phones there are low powered phones. You're better off building a web app, right? Like a progressive web app. It'll be faster, it'll be less memory. Like a friend of mine used to work at Facebook and he was on the Facebook emerging market team. And the Facebook emerging market team doesn't actually deploy Facebook to parts of Africa, Bangladesh, India, like villages in India and all that stuff. Like the emerging markets where phones are just new. They're not deploying the fucking Facebook app that's like huge and that steals all your data. They're deploying a web app that is very optimized to run in like super low bandwidth, right? So Flutter would be terrible for that. Do not use Flutter for that. If you're building a website, do not use Flutter. There's a difference between a website and a web app. So I'll give you an example. If I'm building Irene, this is my startup's website, right? If I were to build this, you might say, why didn't Faisal build this in Flutter? It looks like you could do this in Flutter, you know, have a container, have some buttons, design it correctly. And you're absolutely right. I would have loved to build this in Flutter. The problem is Flutter for web is intended for web apps, which means they're intended for stuff like workflows, complicated toolings. So if you were to build, for example, the following right here, if I go to Facebook ads, this would be perfect for Flutter for web, right? You have a list view, you have some options, you click on it, business logic happens, blah, 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 right? This is what you should use for Flutter. You should not build consumer-facing websites that need to be super lightweight, super fast, SEO, all sorts of stuff. You should not use Flutter for that. A lot of people early on tried it. They said, oh, Flutter sucks, but Flutter was never designed for that. Flutter is designed for powerful web apps, not this. So iRobot, for example, iRobot is a company that makes Roomba. iRobot, kids programming tool, built the following. How do I use this? iRobot coding. Ready, code now. So I click ready, code now. So actually, look at this, right? All this is probably built in React or Vue or WordPress, whatever, right? Most likely, actually, we can probably see what it's built in. I would say React, because React is so popular. Let's see, React. No, Vue. No, I built something, maybe Angular. Angular. Who knows what it's built in? Regardless, point is, it's built in JavaScript as like any other web app, right? React or whatever. However, they got here, they click ready code now. Look at this. This entire thing, this is built in Flutter. The iRobot team used Flutter Web to build this. So look what happens. It's loading their tooling. And here we go. All this, new project. I've never used this in my life, but here we go, right? I can, I guess, program how a robot works, but all this is in Flutter. And so this would be so complicated and annoying to build in JavaScript because there's so much interactions. But with Flutter, especially now that we know Flutter does this widget inside of widget, anything I can dream of, I can build in. So all these blocks are widgets, right? If we were to look at their source code, which we don't have obviously, these are all widgets. And if you look, yeah, I mean, that's it. Like all this play, there we go. There's the robot moving, doing something, cleaning, right? All Flutter. So if you have to build like a, what is it called? Like a final project. Yeah, Flutter's supposed to be rendering. Yep. I mean, here we go, right? This is 3D rendering. There's a Unity plugin actually. Unity, right? Flutter Unity widget. You can install the Unity game engine inside of Flutter, right? But if you don't want to do that, if you don't want to use Unity, there is an amazing thing called Flare. Right, they renamed it. But look at this. This is a rendering engine specifically for Flutter, but also works in a lot of other places. But all these things can work in Flutter. So let's see if we can grab, because we have some time. Let's see if we can do this. Oh no, I'm gonna have to like do so many things. I'll let you guys do this on your own. But Rive is another 3D game engine, like a 3D thing. But if you just search up 3D here, Z Flutter is a very popular one. I've seen a lot about, or examples. Look at these examples. Right? All these are, this is Flutter Web actually running. Yeah. Exactly. Because Flutter itself is a rendering engine. OpenGL, Unity, all this stuff is a plugin. The way plugins work, there's two types of plugins in Flutter. You have this no UI plugin where it talks to like code, Android or iOS code under the hood, and it says, hey, give me some results. Or you have this UI plugins where it actually pokes a hole into your Flutter view, and it embeds another engine in it. So Google Maps is a good example of this. If I go to Google Maps, here, Google Maps, you can see, Google Maps Flutter, right? I have to install all this, is a lot of work, but Flutter isn't drawing Google Maps. It's gonna look exactly like Google Maps. What Flutter is doing is, imagine like, I'm going to actually draw this out because this is actually a very cool technology, but not a lot of people know how this works. And I remember when they were figuring this out, it took them a long time to get this right. So imagine Flutter draws the engine, right? Here's your app, and then Flutter, you have your button here, and you have like all your UI stuff here, right? Now you want to embed Google Maps. So this is Google Maps. Now, what's actually happening here? All this stuff here, let me change the color, blue. Everything blue that you see is Flutter and the Skia rendering engine drawing it, right? It's going in and it's doing all this hard work and drawing it. The black that you see is actually a whole other engine. And there is like a weird transparent view or something happening. And underneath it is OpenGL or whatever, Unity, whatever you call it. Underneath it, it's running and it's poking, it's sending all its pixels through the layer. It's very technical, very cool, but that is how they're able to achieve Google Maps, Unity, a bunch of other stuff. The difference is like Rive, this is different. This is actually, if this was Rive, this would also be blue because, yes, Jacob, well, let's talk about it right after this. This would actually be blue because the team at Rive wrote code in Dart that said, when I see like something from Rive, I want to draw a pixel in Flutter. So Rive is super performance. Not to say Google Maps isn't, but that's how these two work. So I would say if your school project or your real world, you go to a work job, and they say, you know what, we're going to build a Google Maps app, don't bother with Flutter because you're not going to use Flutter at all, right? You're just going to have Flutter running and then you're going to have Google Maps right there. There's going to be no point in Flutter. But if you're building like a restaurant app and in one screen you have Google Maps, that makes sense because the rest of your app is Flutter, except for that one view in Google Maps. For the user, everything looks the same, but it's just the added overhead of having a whole other engine running just to show Google Maps. So if there's no more question around that, Jacob asked a question. Possible to integrate servers? Absolutely, right? We'll do one more example and then I'll open it up to like Flutter questions, career questions, whatever, because we're almost ready to 3. But for example, let's do this, right? We have our craziness here, but what if we wanted to, let's do, hold on, HTTP example Flutter. Fetch data from the internet. Oh, so much. There's too much. But basically, if you use the HTTP package, you can make API calls and connect with servers and pull data. If you want to do multiplayer, you can use WebSockets, right? Flutter supports WebSockets, no problem. Or if you want to go even better and not have to manage WebSockets, you can use Firestore and or Firebase. And Firebase is a completely multiplayer real-time system where you can build chat apps, real-time multiplayer apps, all the different things in the world. So for example, I'll send you guys a tutorial, chat app, Flutter, Firebase. I want everyone here who's interested in yeah. Everyone should follow this and learn about Firebase and Flutter because you'll be able to build real-time apps. I've built chat apps with Flutter. I've built whiteboarding apps. Like the sky's the limit because it's just passing data in real time from one device to another, or one to many, many to one. So it's up to you what you want to do with it. You can have like a multiplayer Tinder for all I can, right? You can do it. It doesn't work, it works. But yeah. So with that, because I've spoken for 2 hours, does anyone have any questions? Can we connect to Firebase from any language? Yeah, I know, time flew by. Can we connect to Firebase from any language device? Yes, Firebase works on anything. Firebase works on Android, iOS, Flutter, web, Mac, like whatever. Firebase, if you go to, like if you don't want to use Flutter, Firebase works everywhere. If you want to use Flutter, you go to Flutter Fire and click on Overview, and you can see, you know, this works on Mac, web, Mac OS beta, optional, it's coming. So most of these things work everywhere. And Windows too, like I'm sure. It's just not showing up there. Yeah. More real life apps built with Flutter, exactly. The one app that I have worked on myself from this crowd is, and they don't have anyone, but it was a Square. It was for Square, the payments company. They contracted me to build like a checkout app. I'll show you guys. This is what I built for Flutter Square checkout. Yeah. This, no, where's the app actually? Where's the press release? There was like a whole press release around this. Oh, right here, there we go. So I built this app right here. This little guy right here. I'm sure I can pull up the source code here, but this is what I built for Square, which was a checkout app. And this was very complicated actually. Let me see if I still have this source code. This was
I think I use this in one of my apps. I think.
yeah, so you probably use the SDK, but I had to build a sample app. I had to use the sample app to show the SDK, and they wanted me to do this animation. Let me see if it's still there. Workspace, Google, I think, yeah. Square, Flutter, maybe. Wow, I wish I had it. Hold on. I'm sure it's somewhere here in my massive tons of different projects I have. Square. Maybe I'm still on the GitHub. Let's see. I just want to show you guys because it was a pretty cool. Can you stop? No, it's gone. I think they took away my access or I must have deleted it. Oh, no, that was the first repo I made. Okay, it's gone. But anyways, it was a cool app. You had to do a lot of animations, and this was really complicated to get working because not this part. There is a video of this. Yeah, right here. There we go. We're right here. So I built this app and these guys demoed it, and it was funny. So this is the app I built. If you just go back and she's demoing. Yeah, so basically their problem was they wanted to show the checkout SDK. So see this family orchards, you would click sign in, it would load up the checkout page. And while watching, I was like, I hope it doesn't crash. There we go. It does the checkout. So this screen took me the longest time to build. They're not even showing it because it had this animation that you had to do. Whenever you click these numbers, these animated things would fall. There we go. That was so complicated, guys. Those dropping things. It took me like 2 weeks to figure that out, how to do it. And they demoed it for like 10 seconds. But yeah, it was cool. It was a fun little app to build. But yeah, so anyways, that is Square, Flutter, all that stuff. Any other questions? Yeah, it was fun. It was fun to build for sure. And this surprised I didn't have the code. Maybe I got rid of it somewhere. How can I decide if I need to use Firebase or there's a SQL database? Depends on your data that you want to store. If you want to use NoSQL, then you have choices of using Firestore, which is on Firebase, or MongoDB. If you want to use real time, then that choice is simple. You got to use Firebase. If you don't want real time, use Mongo. If you need structured data, use Postgres. Don't bother with like anything complicated. I could not learn NoSQL. What were the challenges you were having with NoSQL, Mohammed?
If I can speak, it will be better than writing.
Yeah, of course.
Yes, like I tried to learn NoSQL, that I come back from like SQL background. I used Microsoft Server SQL.
Yeah.
And when I try to like I get used to this to do that, to make the schema and connect the table together, then I test and check that my data. So when I have to, like, I'm turning on NoSQL, like I don't know how can I connect since I need to use the data in multiple places. So
Yeah.
I don't want to overwrite it.
That's the whole thing with NoSQL. NoSQL has, you need to rethink your model. With SQL, you can have multiple tables and you can join those tables. With NoSQL, you're not doing join, so you need to pre-plan how that data is going to be stored. I'm going to stop sharing this one. You need to pre-plan how that data is going to be stored so that you don't have to do a lot of fetches. So if you're building like a blog, if you do the SQL way, you have all your blog posts, it has a blog post ID, then you have all your comments, then you go select everything, join by comment ID, blog ID, whatever, and you get one payload back, which is all your blog posts and each of the comments for each blog post. If you want to do it the NoSQL way, you have to keep your comments inside of the blog post document. And so when you pull a blog post, you're pulling all the comments right away with it. It gets complicated though when you want to migrate data, when you want to scale your data. So NoSQL ends up having either a lot of duplicate data or a lot of queries. So you pull one collection, then you loop over it, then you pull another collection, and you do all the business logic of joining on the back end. There's a pro and a con to it. I would say stick with SQL till you really, really need a NoSQL use case. What do I use NoSQL for? Analytics, right? Analytics are the best for NoSQL. I throw it into a NoSQL database because you're just collecting raw JSON payloads. The payloads can be of any type. You know, I can have payloads coming from like a Boston Dynamics robot. I can have coming from like another robot, from a phone. All have different payload structures. So I'll store them all in an analytics database, and then I can further later do post-processing and clean them using like data flow on Google Cloud, run like a batch ELT job, and move it to like a SQL database for further analysis and machine learning and stuff. But that's like getting way, way too advanced. But like the point is, use the right tool for the job, but use SQL till you really, really need NoSQL. And you'll know when you need NoSQL because your columns for SQL are starting to get huge. It might make sense to use JSON and like NoSQL database.
The project that I'm working on, it's also for my graduation project. Like I need to use artificial intelligence to text recognition from some questions that is coming through the system. Then from the AI, it's going to sort it and like create like categories on it. So that's why I get confused. Which one should I use? Should I use NoSQL or SQL? Then I said like Firebase is already offering like AI that I might try to use. That's why I try to learn NoSQL, but I get confused on that.
Firebase is a whole suite of tools. Firebase is a whole suite of tools. Don't get confused. You can still use the NLP machine learning from Firebase and use SQL. Firebase is just a name for like 30 different tools, right? If I share my screen again here, if I go to Firebase, take a look at this. Go to console, right? Like let's just choose an app here. Firebase is all these different things all at once, right? So you can pick and choose. You want to do machine learning, go machine learning, get started, and then use your SQL database. You don't have to use NoSQL, right? So think of it that way. Don't think of it as if you use one piece, you got to use the whole thing. Absolutely not, right? For many projects, I use Firebase for one thing, like analytics. Like there must be some Firebase projects that I have somewhere. Anyways, those are probably client projects, but like we just use one thing and the rest of it, we're using something else. So it's up to you, right? Don't get worried. Don't get caught up with the technology. Build it till you run into a roadblock, figure out the roadblock. If you can't figure it out and you realize that you made the wrong choice, that's fine, you can change it, right? But like, just pick a technology and run with it and figure out what happens.
Thank you so much. You saved a lot of time for me.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions? Like we have time. I mean, we can end this early, but you guys can ask questions about your careers, your tech careers, or more technology questions like Mohammed. It's all up to you.
I guess my car recently got hit, and that like inspired me to work on a dashcam project.
Cool.
So basically the problem I'm facing right now is network connectivity, because to get data from like a Raspberry Pi in the car to like a phone push notification like, hey, someone hit your car, I think that's like trying to figure out how that would work, because there's like images involved and live video maybe. How would you recommend going about that?
Yeah. So what are you trying to do? You're trying to take data from a camera, a dash cam, you have it connected to a Raspberry Pi, and you want that data being streamed or not, whatever. You want the data to be sent to some server,
Right.
Processing and send you a push notification.
Right.
So what's the challenge there that you have right now?
I'm just right now I just started using TCP sockets, and that's turning out to be a challenge, just managing the connection itself and like sending all the data over. It's just like
Yeah. do you have like a SIM card you're using already?
Yes, there's a SIM card.
And how fast is that data?
It's about 5 megs a second.
Okay, so I don't think you need to send raw, uncompressed images, right? It depends on exactly what you're trying to do. You don't have to send large images. You can send small images, and you shouldn't use TCP. Like, don't bother with TCP. There's a lot of good other protocols out there that you can start to use. There's like a protocol called MQTT that is very popular for IoT. You're essentially dealing with an IoT problem. So look, search up IoT specific protocols. Like TCP IP is good, but you are going to run into this connection issues, right? You might as well use a protocol that handles all that for you. HTTP might be too heavy, but MQTT is what the industry uses to send a lot of data. Let me just see. Let me see here. Yeah, I mean, like this person has sending data with image data with MQTT on his Raspberry Pi. But with, you can base in 64 encode these images and start sending that. But look at MQTT. I think that will solve a lot of your problems.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know about that before. Thank you.
Yeah. Basically, try the one thing I'll advise everyone is don't try to reinvent the wheel. The second you start dealing with like low-level stuff, you've gone off the deep end, and you need to like find a high-level solution, just like Mohammed was talking about. Like, just find a solution that is not optimal. Maybe MQTT is not optimal. TCP/IP would be perfect, but find a solution that's not optimal, but you get the whole thing working. When you have the whole thing working, then you can go, all right, this thing should be sending 100 images a second, but it's only sending 10. But at least it's sending 10 images. Now I can figure out that, is 10 images good for me? If not, then I can go back and I can rewrite some parts of it. But at least I have the whole thing working, that I know that it's possible. If you end up spending 3 months working on TCP/IP only to realize that your actual challenge was like some machine learning thing that you could have solved 3 months ago, then you just wasted a lot of time. So the way I approach everything, and the way you will have to approach stuff in the real world, is get to the most non-optimal solution as fast as possible, and then make it optimal later. And sometimes you won't even need to make it optimal. In those companies, they don't care. The companies want you to like get shit done and move on. Cool. Any other questions?
Not a question, but I'd like to jump in. So first of all, like it was really an informative session, Faisal. So like I love the details. I myself have been developing Flutter apps since 4 years, like since it was launched. I was working at Phil Stacks, if you have known about it, I guess. Dan Macier.
Cool.
He's also a Google developer expert at there. So we've been creating different kind of apps, from let's say food delivery to booking apps and everything. And I'm just sharing, like it's really a good platform. So you can build real life production apps that can be used by thousands of people. And like I have been doing that, so I can really share my experience in this. Also, we are also now developing a tool to test Flutter apps. So I guess it will be presented in the next Google I/O, possibly. It's called Test Suites.
Okay. Amazing. That's amazing.
And yeah, so like I am here in the university. If like someone else wants to know something more about Flutter, I can probably help if Faisal is not available. So I'll be there in UWin Hacks. So if someone wants to, jump in and ask some questions, or maybe get see some apps that I built, so hit me up, please.
That's amazing. Yeah, Rohit's the man. Reach out to him. For sure, for sure. It's a super, super easy to learn platform. It's very powerful. Shriji asked, I know Angular as well as Java. For mobile and web cross-platform development, should I start learning Flutter or Mean? It depends on what your goal is, Shriji. If you want to learn, like if you want to get a job, like in 3 months, right? Then you might as well double down on like React or Vue, because you already know Angular. It might be an easier path to get like a full stack web job and stuff. But if you're open to spending like 6 months learning and like refining your skills, and you're not really looking for a job, but you have a job or whatever, you're like 3 years from graduation, start learning Flutter and Mean, right? Learn Flutter, start learning, figuring it out, and then start figuring out Mean Stack. Because they're both very fundamentally different. Flutter is very, very mobile focused. Yes, there's that Flutter web component, but even Flutter web is not meant to replace React, Vue, or Angular for websites. It's intended to replace for powerful web apps, right? But a lot of times, a lot of companies aren't using Flutter right now in the way that they do with React or Angular for web. So it really depends on what your goals are. I like Block. Rohit, I like it. I recently started using GetX, which is not Block. I think it's another one, but GetX.
Yeah, independent only.
Yeah. GetX was nice. So
I mean,
what Rohit
when I
asked,
played this for some reason, the maintainer is kind of a rude and advertise the package falsely. But yeah, it's one of the popular packages.
yeah. So what Rohit is talking about is something called state management. As you start building your application, don't even look at this right now. Do not
My
look
bad.
at block provider because it will confuse you. First, learn to build a Flutter app, and this is how I recommend you learn about any technology. First, learn to build it without any frameworks or helpers, right? Just learn it. Then once you start hitting a bottleneck, when you actually realize that, why am I doing the same thing over and over? There must be a better way. That's when you can start using these other frameworks that can make Flutter development easier. But just don't jump to it, right? So Block, Provider, Redux are all ways to manage state, but don't even bother with it. You just manage state however you figure out it, right? Just get it working. Then when you realize that, you know what, this is kind of complicated and making mistakes a lot, then you can go back and figure out, okay, this is how I should use state, use Block, Provider, or Redux. So these are all for like intermediates, not for beginners. Cool. Any other questions? No problem, Willa. Yeah, please. So I'll look, add me on LinkedIn. I'm gonna send you my LinkedIn. And here's my Twitter, but like whatever. Twitter's just like for nonsense. But yeah, add me on LinkedIn. Let's stay connected. If you guys build Flutter apps, if you guys have tech questions, as you guys graduate, I'm more active on both, Mohammed, but they're both used for different purposes. So you can do it both. But as you guys graduate and want more advice, feel free to just message me. Happy to help. But other than that, I'll give you guys the hour back. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was a great event.
Cool.
Thank you. Have a good one.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Faisal.
Thank you so much.